Is anyone else getting palpitations from the timer? Because I certainly am. But I'll see how I go. So I'm James. I'm a junior doctor. I'm not on strike. And I'm going to talk to you today about the PAD-SIM study. So I've been interested for a while in how we empower bystanders to better respond to cardiac arrest. And for the last couple of years, I've been thinking about bystander defibrillation, which is something we've already touched on today. So you guys all know that early defibrillation makes a difference in cardiac arrest. And you also know, I think already, that bystanders doing defibrillation, and Ben set me up nicely for this, is the easy way to get that out to our patients. And we have a whole system of support designed to maximize the chance of getting that bystander defibrillation to the patient who needs it in their hour or minute of need. But we've already seen that at the moment we struggle to do that as well as we would like. And one of the ways we do that is we have help. So we have a call handler and we have an AED itself that tells the bystander what to do with that defibrillator. And the Resus Council say it's simple. Anyone can use an AED. The hardest thing is turning it on. But we wanted to put that to the test a little bit. So we wanted to find out how effectively naive bystanders, lay individuals, could use a public access defib with that guidance from the emergency call handler. And that is standardized guidance using the MPDS system that's used around the world. So it's quite hard to test that in real life because it's quite hard to be a fly on the wall at the cardiac arrest before a lot of you guys arrive on scene. So to sort of start answering this question, we used some simulation. So we ran 16 simulations of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. And we had 2 bystanders taking part in each resuscitation. So they had about 10 minutes and they were guided to call our simulated call handler. They were sent to retrieve a pad from 100 meters away. And they were taught and talked through on the phone how to start CPR. And then when that pad arrived, they were guided to use that just as we would do so in a real cardiac arrest. And we looked at a few things. We looked at the critical time intervals, and then we did some fancy human factors stuff that I'll talk to you about over coffee if I don't get a chance to tell you about now. So we used volunteers from the University of Edinburgh. They weren't medical people. They weren't emergency services people. And some of them knew a bit about CPR already, and a few of them knew about AEDs too. But I think this group was fairly representative of the men and women who are out doing AED and CPR in Scotland. So this is a really exciting plot for me, and we did this for every sim because this plot tells you a story of what happens in a cardiac arrest. As every minute goes by, we're building on our chain of survival. So we're recognizing cardiac arrest and calling for help. There's a bit of chat. Where are you? What's the address? And finally, we're sending someone to get the pad. And there's no CPR all the time. And then finally, when one bystander's gone for the pad, we get hands on the chest and we get a nice green bar. We've got CPR. Right. But look what happens when the pad arrived on scene in this simulation. We go red. The CPR stops. And it's about 80 seconds from that pad arriving in the room to that shock, and there's no CPR. Can anyone spot the problem? Pre-shock pause, yeah? So we know that a pre-shock pause, the shorter that pause, the more likely our shock is to work. And this was not an uncommon story. If you look across all 16 simulations, I know it's a small sample, but on average it takes 2 minutes from the pad arriving to the shock being delivered. And before that shock, we found a median pre-shock pause for that initial shock, that most important shock, of 76 seconds. Just want you to think about that while I panic at the time. So we kind of asked why that happened. And what we did is we said, well, what should happen in an ideal world and what happens in our sims? And we did something called Sherpa, which is a human factors tool that identifies every deviation from work as imagined. And so we came up with a list of 5 subtasks that we wanted our bystanders to perform that were likely to be at risk of error. And I want you to look at these 2 in yellow. So in 75% of our simulations, when the call handler told the bystanders to expose the chest because they knew the pad had arrived, the CPR stops. And actually, even before that, in just over half of the simulations, the pad arriving in the room was the trigger for CPR stopping. And that's possibly one of the reasons we got this pre-shock pause. So I'm hoping we can publish this research and tell you more about it in due course, but I want to leave you with some things to think about now while I run out of time. In our simulations, call handler guided defibrillation was associated with a prolonged pre-shock pause. And if that happens in real life, we've got a problem because our defibrillation is less likely to work. We've identified some specific bystander errors that may contribute to that pause. And I guess one of the next steps is thinking about what prompts can we give our bystanders so that keeping hands on the chest becomes the priority. Thanks for your time.